Good afternoon, everyone who's listening in. I would like to kind of kick off my presentation with a sort of wider, broader context under which Muslim politics in Kenya have evolved, have evolved over the last 100 years or so, because it is from that angle that my analysis of later more Islamist politics sort of emerge from. And this context is basically shaped by a number of trends. And in this case, one trend that has shaped Muslim politics in Kenya historically has been this trend towards reforming Islamic religious practice, but also Muslim public life in the context of first the colonial situation from the early 1900s to the 1960s. But also the other trend has also been sort of what one might call a democratization of what is regarded as Islamic knowledge. And of course, the debates that also arise from that. Now, the move towards sort of more reformist Islamic ideas in Kenya has been traced, well, actually in the last decades of the 19th century, but much more importantly, during the first decades of the 20th century, in the works, this case of Islamic reformers based in Mombasa and throughout the East African coast, the well-known of whom was Sheikh Alamin al-Mazrui, who is known for his Islamic pamphlets and publications that came out in the 1930s up to the 1940s, when he passed away in 1947. And basically, the main themes that were covered in these sort of Swahili Muslim pamphlets were issues around the modernization of Muslim life in the context of an advancing Western culture, in this case through British colonization of Kenya, but also offering a sort of challenge to established Muslim traditional scholars and what was then the established Muslim intellectual tradition on the coast. I mean, I think in other parts of the world being referred to as Sufism, but it is also understood that Sheikh Alamin's kind of intellectual campaign against local Islamic practices was not as successful, due in part to his own kinship with upper class established Arab families on the East African coast, in this case the Mazrui family, reflecting what was then divisions within the Muslim community on the coast that had been shaped by this kind of hardening of racial categories on the East African coast, dividing the coastal Muslim population into Swahili and Arab identities, and so on and so forth. But by the 1960s, when Kenya becomes independent, and the 10-mile coastal strip, for those who know this history, becomes a part of the Republic of Kenya from 1963, 1964. There is a sort of new, what you might call immediacy in terms of modernizing Muslim public life in the context of marginalization coming from, in this case, upcountry Kenya, when Western upcountry elites take charge of the instruments of power from the 1960s. So under this context, from 1970s, 1980s, you see another trend of kind of expanding opportunities for Islamic study, in particular in the Muslim world, places such as Libya, Saudi Arabia, but even much closer home in Zanzibar. And when you see a sort of a trend of locally trained, local young Muslims trained abroad and picking up on ideas around Islamic reform. Of course, this is the period of the expansion of the Wahhabist doctrine, which is sort of brought back home by this group of graduates who come back from universities such as Medina, Al-Azhar in Egypt, to challenge again local Islamic practices and local Islamic intellectual life. It is under this context, especially in the 1980s, when Kenya heads towards the politically turbulent years of the 1990s, that questions are also being asked around engagement with the political process as well, in this fight or campaign to better Muslim conditions in a Christian-dominated country. So when Kenya returns back to multi-party politics, the Islamic Party of Kenya is quickly established in early 1992, after which Kenyan Muslim politics enter a very interesting moment, where these sort of intellectual reformist debates become increasingly entwined, excuse me, with fights or efforts to better the Muslim condition in Kenya via political means. Of course, the Islamic Party of Kenya is not registered, but it gives rise to a welter of not only articulation of grievances, Muslim grievances, but also debates regarding, amongst Muslims themselves, regarding what needs to be done to improve the Muslim condition in Kenya. So by 1997, after what I call the effective demise of the Islamic Party of Kenya, what were then had developed as factions within that party go separate ways. So one faction proceeds to register a number of community-based organizations through which the campaign to better Muslim conditions in Kenya will be channeled, but also kind of seeing that fight as being synonymous with the broader fight for human rights and constitutional reform in the country. The other faction, if you like, that did not believe that the Muslim condition in Kenya would be better through such constitutional and political means, took charge of more informal channels of debate and organization. And one of the most popular one, of course, was the mosque platform. But also this coming at a time when there was the kind of arrival of cable TV and the internet, but also at a time when a lot of Muslims in Kenya or East Africa would travel to the Gulf and to other Muslim countries, and a global media space would also update the global Muslim audience on the ongoings in the Middle East. So it is through these kind of developments that a section of Kenyan Muslims begin to see themselves as part of an international ummah or Muslim public. And of course, during the same time, in 1998, Kenya is attacked for the first time by an Islamist organization, in this case, Al-Qaeda. By 2001, evidence was already showing that some Kenyans were beginning to get involved in such violence. Between 2001, of course, and 2006, that sort of early network of Islamists in East Africa, that the Al-Qaeda East Africa cell had developed, disintegrates and disappears, but a number of its members end up in Somalia, and become actually part and parcel of what will then emerge as Al-Shabaab in 2006. Part of this group, of course, were Kenyans such as Saleh Naban Saleh from the Majengo neighborhood in Mombasa, working very closely with Fazul Mohammed, who was actually at some point known as the leader of Al-Qaeda in East Africa. But also between 2001 and 2006, what also kind of develops is that these kind of informal channels of debate in the mosque platform, you see that speakers were becoming increasingly radical and increasingly anti-American throughout the years. It is kind of this network and this space that Al-Shabaab and when Al-Shabaab kind of begins to expand into Kenya, it is this kind of platform that gives it that actually it actually spreads through this kind of local network. And of course, individuals such as Abu Jogo, who comes off of the IPK hubris of the 1990s, become very, very fundamental in the expansion of this network from 2006. So certain key mosques by 2009 are already being named as key radicalization and recruitment zones for Al-Shabaab in Kenya. In this case, Masjid Musa in Mombasa was one of those mosques, Masjid Sakina, neighboring Masjid Musa as well, but also in Nairobi, Pumwani Riyadh Mosque being named as one of those key mosques as well, and with individuals who are connected to each other and would organize the activities together. But also some mosques in the neighboring Isili neighborhood that neighbors Pumwani, and further up country to Eldoret and also Western Kenya. By 2011, when Kenya sends the Kenya Defense Forces to Somalia to root out Somalia from its key bases there, this network was known to have sent young Kenyan Muslims, about between 500 and 1,000 of them by 2011. And it is from that moment that we see the first proper blowback coming from this network that had grown since 2006. And it is also since then that a number of other kind of developments have taken place in terms of how the network has adapted to the response that has been targeted at it, coming from security services in Kenya. And this is where I'll stop.